Hey, do you guys really think that's okay? Sales is all about numbers. Damn it. Seriously, what the hell are you all doing? Especially, you there, Parker. I mean, come on, you've only 5 contracts this month.
I'm sorry. But I closed 25 contracts last month.
You're really incompetent. You know that. Seriously, a high school graduate is a whole different level. High school graduates are completely useless nowadays. Who even drops out of high school these days?
Well, that's because there were circumstances that I had to.
I don't care about your reasons. You were a bad boy or too dumb to even go to college, right? You're really embarrassing. You know that.
Damn. I'm the one getting a severe scolding from the boss right now. I'm John Parker. I'm 35 years old. Last month, I closed a lot of contracts, but this month I haven't been able to close many. Our company's sales department is tough with a boss who's like a strict drill sergeant, so it's always tense. The boss's shouts are always flying around, and when he gets irritated, he tears up sheets of copy paper. It's like an evil spirit possesses him. No, maybe he's actually a demon, so maybe we should get an exorcist. Anyway, when the boss's mood sours, he immediately takes it out on everyone. He was pretty harsh on me. As the boss Nelson said, I'm a high school graduate. Even though I only graduated from high school, there's a reason for it. And it's not like I was a bad boy or too dumb to get into college. I was rather serious and quiet, and I even had good grades. The simple reason I couldn't go to college was that my family was extremely poor. The level of poverty in my family was such that we were no longer living below the welfare level. We weren't actually receiving welfare, but watching programs about welfare on TV. I thought, whoa, we're better off than them. We were a family of 5, living with my parents and 3 children. But since it was difficult to have 3 proper meals a day, the children filled their stomachs with school lunches. Our meals at home were simple, just something like soup and bread. It feels like I've gone back several decades. There was a class at school where we experienced meals from the past. We ate a dish made of wheat flour and sweet potato vines, boiled together. Everyone said it wasn't tasty, but for me, it was a feast. From that moment on, I realized my family was different from everyone else's. Due to poverty, I couldn't even dream of going to college, so I had no choice but to work after graduating from high school. My parents aren't very well enough, so I can't let them work anymore. And I wanted to give my younger siblings a better life, so I wasn't ashamed to work after high school. But now that I've become a working adult, everyone around me at least has a college degree. And especially in our company, everyone has a college degree. In other words, I was the only high school graduate. Even though everyone else doesn't have good sales performance, the boss doesn't lecture them for 3 hours. It's just me who gets taken to a separate room and lectured for 3 hours. I thought if I could use that time for work, it would be more efficient, but if I said that, he'd get angry, so I kept quiet. One day, it was decided that our company's president would retire. It was a sudden announcement, so everyone was surprised. The president seemed to have been suffering from a lung disease for some time. and it appears he judged that he could no longer work physically. He did seem to struggle when passing by, and since he's getting up there in age, he probably wants to take it easy. The president will turn 70 next year. At that age, he would retire and relax on the porch or do some gardening in the yard for a change of pace. After his retirement was decided, a party was held for the inauguration of the new president. No one knows who the new president is yet. We'll find out at the venue, and everyone seems excited.
Hey, what if the new boss is me? There's a chance, right? I'm talented, and it'd be a waste not to make me boss. I'm like a 1 in 1,000 level genius. I might even get promoted to president. Well, can't help it, I'm a genius,
Yeah, I see.
But it'll be a problem, huh? Then who will take over sales department? There aren't many people who can work like me, And there are problem children too, like you, Parker.
Me? Am I the problem?
Of course you are. You're always giving me headaches. I don't want to complain every single day. You're the one who makes me irritated. My blood pressure has gone up because of you.
Even if you say that. The boss was quite overweight, so he thought it was because of that his blood pressure was high. It's not like I'm the one irritating him. Besides, the boss indulges in sweets, rich foods, spicy things, and so on. So it's no wonder his blood pressure is high. He might end up with heart failure or even diabetes. It wouldn't be surprising. I wondered why everything had to be blamed on me. And it's somewhat pitiful how he half-jokingly thinks he'll be promoted to president. The boss thinks he's competent at his job, but from my perspective, he's not at all. I have no idea why he became the boss in the first place. What he does is occasionally take me to a separate room and cram me in for about 3 hours, then go out to get contracts, talk on the phone with young employees who are out in the field, rip up sheets of copy paper wastefully, and then polish his shoes and fix his hair. Let's leave aside the shoe polishing. They say business starts from the ground up, and having dirty shoes gives off an unclean impression. But it was comical to me that he was combing his scanty hair. The boss is only 40 years old, but his head is balding. He is looking desperately in the hand mirror, trying to hide his baldness with his few hairs. He says to me, "Hey, you have too little hair. You're in your 30s, but dang, that's bad. But I just have thin hair." It seems like my hair texture hasn't changed much since birth. It's still fine like a baby's hair. So my hair looks less frequent and softer, so it's flat. The boss says it makes me look bald. Then what about you? I thought, but I can say that with my mouth torn open. If I did, it might blow up our company, like Mount Vesuvius erupted and destroyed Pompeii. I genuinely felt that way. The inauguration party for the president is on the first Sunday of next month. We are renting a huge hall in the city for it. All the employees will gather there, but my boss has been half-jokingly talking about what he'll do when he becomes the new president ever since then. I'll definitely put you at ease. That's absolutely not going to happen. I wanted to say, but if I did, Mount Vesuvius in his head would definitely erupt. No matter what, I thought it was best to just endure it, thinking that If I pushed back, I'd lose. On the day of the new president's inauguration party, I was dressed to the best suit, and I headed from home to the hall. Since I had plenty of time, I killed time at a Starbucks near the venue. I had spread out some documents, so I looked like a capable businessman. Sometimes I'd think it was painful to see people trying to act cool with their MacBook at Starbucks, but maybe I was one of them. However, on that day in particular, I was filled with a strange sense of excitement. As it was getting late, I left Starbucks and headed to the hall. Everyone was gathered, and I met some people who had been transferred to other departments after a long time. Those who had been moved to the planning department said they were getting a much better environment than in sales, and I thought they must have all disliked Nelson. And I wandered around the hall looking for my seat, but I couldn't find it. There should have been a chair with a paper attached to the back with my name on it, so I could easily find it, but there was no chair with my name on it. I thought it might be a mistake and kept looking, but since there was none, someone must have forgotten after all. As I was at a loss, my boss, Nelson, came over. Nelson looked at me with a grin.
You're looking for your seat, aren't you? But there's no seat for you.
Wait, hold on. What do you mean by that?
I'm telling you, there's no seat for you. We don't need someone with a low education level here. Everyone is a college graduate, so having a high school graduate like you would be weird, right? You're out of place with your low education, so go home.
Oh, I see. Got it. Then I'll leave.
Since you're nothing to do at home, go to the office and do some work, and make sure to clean everyone's desks.
The boss laughed out loud, looking pleased with himself. I couldn't understand why he found it so amusing. I can't understand the mentality of finding joy in belittling others to this extent, but, oh well. The mind of a nasty person is too messy and crazy for the average person to understand. And in the first place, trying to understand or empathize with them would be wrong. I've tried to understand the boss several times before and even attempted to compromise, but I've decided that I can't get along with him anymore. From here on, it's based on what I heard from Roberts in the sales department. The inauguration party for the new president started, and the executive vice president made a speech first. Then, each department head gave a speech. Nelson, the head of the sales department, tried to boast about himself by telling blatant lies. For example, he claimed to have secured contracts brought in by other young employees as if he had obtained them himself, trying to curry favor with the higher-ups. He also claimed to be concerned about the mental health of the employees and said he was even counseling them, portraying himself as a good boss. But that was all a lie. We were always grilled and shouted at by Nelson. As for me, I was taken to a separate room for 3 hours, forced to bow my head, and subjected to a full course of yelling. The sales department folks apparently listened with a sense of resignation. However, when the executive vice president said, "Finally, let's have the new president take the stage," it fell silent. No matter how much time passed, the new president didn't show up. So, the executive vice president loudly called out the new president's name.
President Sean. Where's President Sean Parker?
Huh.
President Parker, Where on earth have you gone? You were supposed to announce your presidency in front of everyone today, but you could be late. Nelson, do you know anything?
Well,
President Parker is the new president. He was in the sales department, right? He's the new president.
oh, I sent him home.
Huh?
Well, because he's poorly educated. I told him to leave. I didn't think he was the new president.
Nelson looked pale. Roberts saw sweat dripping from Nelson's head, making his few remaining strands of hair soaked. Furthermore, he was trembling and seemed to be bracing himself for being shouted at by the executive vice president. As expected, the executive vice president was furious and confronted Nelson.
What on earth did you do? He's the new president, and if he's not here, this party is meaningless.
Well,
First of all, what do you mean by telling him to leave because he's poorly educated? Are you only able to judge people based on their education?
no, that's not it.
However, that sales department folks snitched on the executive vice president about how Nelson always criticized and bullied me for my education. And then the executive vice president was furious.
I see. So, Nelson, you are someone who can only see people based on their education.
No, that's not it.
Do you really think high school graduates are at the bottom?
Well, to be honest, sometimes I do think they're at the bottom. I mean, high school graduates are either dumb or delinquents, right?
Is that so? So, did you think I was at the bottom too?
What?
Actually, I'm also a high school graduate. My family was poor, so I couldn't afford to go to college. Maybe I could have gone to college if I had tried various means, but I didn't want to go to college if it meant causing trouble or worry for my parents.
I really respect you, Executive Vice President. You have a great record coming from the sales department, and you're even implementing advanced initiatives for safety education within the company. I think you're a very admirable person. So,
Then, how am I different from President Parker?
it's nothing.
I also learned for the first time at that moment that the executive vice president was also a high school graduate. I had always assumed he was a college graduate. When we had a hobby conversation before, he said he liked reading, but he said he liked genres of books that I couldn't understand. It is a philosophy book. He mentioned Sartre and Foucault, but I had no idea what he was talking about. He explained a little, but it was too difficult, and I mostly forgot it. So I had just assumed he was a smart person who graduated from the literature department or something. But it seems the executive vice president's family was also quite poor, and he couldn't go to a college either. I reflected on the fact that I had been judging people based on preconceptions. I wasn't necessarily belittling people based on preconceptions, but it's true that it's important to see through to the essence of people. Especially if I were to become the new president, it would be even more crucial. Nevertheless, I doubt Nelson ever imagined I would become the new president. Upon learning that I was the one who would become the new president, it seemed like everyone was looking at him with suspicion. Roberts from the sales department seemed to be smirking as he watched. By the way, Roberts is a college graduate, but he's a good guy who gets along well with me. It's not like everyone in the sales department hated me just because I only graduated from high school. If anything, everyone in the sales department seemed to dislike Nelson. That's because, as I mentioned earlier, he's like a strict drill sergeant. Among them, he was particularly tough on me, but Roberts was the one who got yelled at after me, so we comforted each other at the bar. Nelson ended up being looked at with suspicion by everyone. He never thought things would turn out like this just because he insulted me and sent me away for being poorly educated. The party ended abruptly, and it seems the executive vice president went home angry. I grinned as I listened to the phone call from Roberts. Oh, I see. Thanks. Nelson probably never expected things to turn out like this.
Anyway, you are the president. I can't even speak casually anymore, gotta use honorifics.
If it's a private conversation, you can use casual language. After all, we hang out together on holidays, right?
Thanks, but now it's about company matters, so I'll use honorifics from now on. How could you be the new president? Sure, the number of contracts before was impressive, but Nelson said it was terrible the other day.
Then I'll speak honorifically too. Oh, that thing. Well, there's a reason for it.
What's the reason? Did something sketchy happen in the deal?
No way, it's not like that. Actually, I secured a contract with NASA.
What? NASA?
Yes, you know how we develop and sell parts for airplanes. Right. Well, that NASA finally said they wanted our company's parts. When Nelson first received an inquiry email, he thought it was a prank. He apparently thought there was no way the real NASA would inquire, so he was planning to just ignore it. But I was convinced it was the real NASA. So I secretly went ahead with the business.
Wait, was it for that reason that you went on a business trip the other day?
Yeah, Nelson didn't know about that. He happened to be on a business trip at the same time. So, there's no way he could have known that I was consulting in NASA.
But, could you understand the technical terms of science? I mean, no offense, but you're only graduated from high school, right?
Oh, actually, my parents were that kind of scientist.
Huh?
Well, my father and mother specialize in the space field.
What? Seriously? I didn't know that. Oh, sorry, I forgot to use honorifics.
No, let's just talk normally. It's bothersome.
Right. Nobody is listening anyway. Hey, why didn't you tell me that before?
Nah, nobody bothers to say what their parents do, right? You don't say your parents are nurses or movie directors unless somebody asks you.
Yo, I guess you're right.
Well, you know, since I was a kid, hearing about space science and reading books helped.
That's awesome. Then it's not strange at all for you to become the new president. You can understand space science and even contract with NASA. That's amazing. But did Nelson not know about that?
Oh yeah, Nelson also overlooked me securing the contract with NASA. And it's a $500 million contract.
Nelson is seriously incompetent. He's always saying we're incompetent, but he's the real incompetent one.
Well, besides that, I've been working on the manual. I was asked by the executive vice president to do it because he knew I could understand space science.
Why did the executive vice president know?
Well, actually, I was surprised to find out after joining the company. but it seems the executive vice president was taught English by my grandpa.
Huh? Really?
Oh, the managing director came from Japan when he was little, and he couldn't speak English, so my grandfather taught him English. So the managing director had heard a lot about my parents.
I see.
Well, if you just look at my name, you'll see I'm a normal American, but the managing director knew I was their child from the beginning. So I was helping the managing director with his scientific manuals and systems.
Yep, exactly. It's amazing, right? Congratulations. Hey, will you still hang out with me off duty? Now that you're the president, we can't interact as equals anymore. Right?
What are you talking about? You and I are friends, aren't we? There might be a hierarchy at work, but as long as Roberts doesn't mind, let's hang out like we used to. After all, neither of us is popular.
Don't say sad things. Well, I haven't even thought about getting married yet.
With that, I finished the phone call with my good friend, Roberts. Roberts seems like a mischievous guy, but he often gets scolded by Nelson for making mistakes. But he's cheerful and friendly, and he's a good guy who's kind to me. Roberts was just amazed when he found out about the negotiations with NASA that I succeeded in, and about my background. His good point is that he doesn't envy and then resent people. From now on at the company, Roberts and I will have a boss-subordinate relationship, but since we get along well, as long as he's okay with it, I plan to have him as a playmate during off hours. Anyway, I don't have a girlfriend and I'm bored. Plus, now that I've become the CEO, there ain't no time to be finding a girlfriend. Things have gotten so busy to the point where I barely have time to breathe. At the party, besides me and the X6, nobody knew who was gonna be the president until that day, but everyone would be shocked to find out it was me. Especially Nelson, since he thought I was just some incompetent, uneducated guy. But I've actually been handling various tasks, and even nailed that NASA deal. Since the previous president resigned due to illness, we discussed who should take over, and I'm genuinely happy it was me. I never imagined becoming the president, especially considering I had been made to bow my head for 3 hours while being yelled at. So, I kicked off the new regime. The deal with NASA made the news, and our sales skyrocketed even more. But in return, orders came pouring in from all over, and production and sales couldn't keep up. Blaming Nelson, who caused many people to quit, the executive vice president said that such an intimidating and morally bankrupt guy should be demoted. Sure, the sales department gets about 15 newbies every year, but only about 3 brainwashed ones stick around after a year. So yeah, maybe I'm brainwashed too, but it means only those with a tough mentality can survive in the sales department. But that ain't good for the future. So, I demoted Nelson to a regular employee. He was crying and begging for forgiveness, but neither me nor anyone else was gonna forgive him.
I can't do this. Being demoted to a regular employee now, we've got a mortgage, car loan, and kids' education fees to pay.
Even if you say that, we can't just ignore the complaints from the sales department.
Yeah, the boss is right. Look, there are even this many anonymous postcards addressed to the president. These are from the suggestion box we have installed in the office.
Damn, What am I gonna do now? My life might as well be over.
Well then, I'm ordering you to work in Kansas State. They're short-staffed there, so get going.
What?
You know, Kansas State, it is a country town where the plains go all the way.
Wait a minute. Why is it so rural? Who cares if it's in the boonies?
Well, it's not just about working in Kansas State. You don't just do sales in that town. You have to go to neighboring states and cities.
No way. I hate this.
Nelson was screaming like he'd lost his mind. But considering how unfairly he treated us, he should just suck it up and deal with it. Well, in the end, he reluctantly accepted the gig in Kansas State. It's in the middle of nowhere, more like a tiny office than a branch. Just recently, 2 female sales reps at that branch quit for child care and elder care reasons, so he had to go and fill in the gaps. With Nelson's gone, the sales department's been running smoothly and our performance has improved even more. But we need to hire more people to keep up with production and sales. So I decided to hold an orientation to attract some top-notch talent. Of course, by top-notch, I don't mean just book smarts. It could be someone with a certification or even someone who's great at communication, even without a degree. We had folks show up for the orientation, not just young folks, but also young foreigners who want to work in the U.S. They studied English and culture at schools and colleges back home, so they probably know about American companies. Some jobs can be done with simple tasks, even if their English is not very good. I suggested to the young man, who could not speak English very well, that he should work in the factory. Turns out, he came from a poor country and has been hopping from job to job. He had a work visa and had been working in the US, but he got fired for not being able to use honorifics or write proper sentences. When I showed him the English manual I made, he read it with great interest. He was really interested and said he'd love to work here. I wanted to hire him, so I told him to come for the job interview. Then, several other folks showed up for our hiring test. It was pretty sudden, so I know HR must have been scrambling, but later on, I'll treat everyone to a fancy dinner at a top-notch restaurant. I begged them. HR folks were like, "Yay, the boss is so generous, and we'll do our best," and they scrambled to get everything ready for the test. There was even a young guy there who struggled with English. He looked a bit nervous and kept looking around. He came to apply for a position in the department that handles light assembly work at the factory, so we gave him a simple assembly test. Turns out, he put together the parts in no time flat. When I asked him in English, he said he used to work in a factory back in his home country and told me in broken English. In the English writing test, he scored full marks. Since his homeland also has English as an official language, it's natural for him to be proficient in English. With manuals available, even if he struggles with English, he should be able to handle his duties somehow. During the interview, I asked questions in English, and he responded with a lot of enthusiasm. So, I decided to hire him. In the end, we ended up hiring 500 people across all departments. We don't usually conduct such large-scale hiring event for new graduates, but if we don't do this, our future operations will suffer. The 500 newly hired individuals include second career professionals, mid-career hires, and foreigners, but they all have some skills or aspirations. I trust them and have started delegating tasks to them, one after another. Of course, my workload has inevitably increased, and I find myself working tirelessly, day and night. However, thanks to that, our company was able to secure contracts with renowned companies worldwide.
I'm glad we made you the president. You're truly remarkable, President Parker.
Oh, it's just a stroke of luck.
But you know, luck is part of ability, right? And everyone we hired is so hardworking and talented. We need to work even harder ourselves from now on.
You're right. We need to set a good example. At that moment, Robert stashed over. I froze, thinking there might be some trouble, but that wasn't the case.
Listen, we've received an order from the U.S. Department of Defense.
Huh.
What did you say?
It's a whopping $400 million.
Way to go, Roberts. That's amazing.
Isn't that incredible? What did you do?
Well, remember those materials President Parker made for NASA? I tweaked them a bit and made them for the U.S. Department of Defense. And I happened to have a chance to go drinking with someone from the U.S. Department of Defense, so I asked if they'd like to see a presentation, and they took the bait.
But you weren't good at scientific terms, were you?
Well, I wanted to be like President Parker, so I studied hard. Actually, I recently started dating a scientist girlfriend, and she's been teaching me a lot of knowledge.
What?
Sorry, President. I went ahead and took the initiative.
I see. Weren't President Parker and Roberts quite close? You two used to hang out a lot during their time in the sales department.
Yes, and we were scolded together too. We were the dynamic duo, scolded by the former our boss. But anyway, Roberts, that's not good. You can't just take unilateral actions.
Well, I went to a matchmaking event and met someone. We're actually considering marriage, so President, please come to the wedding. I'll invite you.
Oh, are you even thinking about marriage? It was a bit bitter that Roberts ran me through. But seeing him so happy, I decided to forgive him. Still, to secure a contract from the U.S. Department of Defense, Roberts must be quite a remarkable individual, just like me. I thought back to how he used to get scolded by Nelson, just as much as I did. Nelson really didn't have an eye for talent. Sure, he may have been a bit of a show-off, but with careful guidance, he's someone who can do good work. Following Roberts' success, the sales department's performance skyrocketed. On one of my days off, I was told there was someone Roberts wanted me to meet and was brought to a cafe. Since it's our day off, we're speaking casually. So, who's the person you wanted me to meet today?
Well, you'll see when you meet her.
Well, okay. The person who appeared next was Roberts' girlfriend and her friend. She was stunningly beautiful, and I felt my face flush. I never imagined there could be such a beauty in this world.
She's interested. After I told her about you, I described you as a cool young president.
Hey, what are you saying without asking me first?
All right, it's a double date today.
And so, I was involuntarily thrust into a double date. To be honest, The person brought to me is my type, a perfect match. I secretly hope she'll become my girlfriend to enrich my personal life even more. If that happens, my life will be even more vibrant.